to part 2 of today's Couch Potato Diary. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Coming up on the show, we are going to look at Game 1 of the NBA Finals, get ready for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and then it's a Football Friday as we get ready for Week 1 in the CFL. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want more CFL, there's a new podcast out on the Couch Potato Diary Sports Network called The Rider Happy Hour. You can get that wherever you are consuming this. In podcast form, it's just on the Couch Potato Diary feed, and in video form, it is just lives on the channel, but also it will have its own playlist. So check that out. All right, let's get into it. Talk some hoops. Game 1 of the NBA Finals goes down, and what a sound and thorough ass-kicking by the Boston Celtics as they beat up on the Dallas Mavericks and are now 3 wins away from hoisting their 18th NBA championship. Basically, the full breakdown of this is everything went right for the Boston Celtics, but obviously the big story of this game is Kristaps Porzingis, who was unreal in Game 1. And you kind of figured that if there's anything, if there's anything that he can do, it'll be shooting the basketball. He can get that part of it down, I think. What amazed me is he did everything, right? Like coming off of a 38-day layoff, where, by the way, they only played 10 games, which is insane. But coming off of a 38-day layoff, for him to have the quickness to get around the defender and get to the rim for a dunk, the ability and the hops to get out there and make the blocks on the defensive side, he was a well-rounded basketball player in Game 1, and that is a big concern for Dallas. We talked about it in the preview. The Mavericks don't really have a perfect answer. And I thought, honestly, one of the things we talked about was when Luka was on him and it started to slow him down and he couldn't really bully. And again, it just gave you time to get the help. But then the problem is, like, okay, he will recognize that. And now you have Lively on Tatum or Gafford on Tatum. They did that a couple times. Tatum blows by him and there's just nobody helping out at the rim. So it is a tricky balancing act now for Dallas to figure out how to stop it. I think for Dallas, your hope is that it just can't be that insane again in Game 2. Not necessarily like Porzingis is going to get his. Brown was unbelievable. And Tatum was just all right. Tatum was perfectly fine just being one of the guys hanging out while Porzingis took over and while Brown took over. But you're going to assume that the other depth pieces aren't going to step up in that way for Dallas, if you are hoping that they have a hope. And I have, right around the trade deadline, had a nice plus 800 ticket on the Mavs to win the NBA championship. That is not looking its best right now. But I think for Dallas, this was a major concern coming in, is like, how many stops can you get? And I even brought it up in the preview. I was like, look, I understand. I am focusing so much on, okay, how does Boston slow down Dallas? How are they going to be able to do this? Because you can at least work through a couple of options. If plan A don't work for Dallas, there isn't a better option coming in or a different, like, oh, well, we can mix this up at him. It's like, no. This is kind of it. They don't really have a whole lot there right now that they can throw at teams and give them problems. So I do think that there should be a bit of a concern here from a Dallas perspective that they couldn't stop them at all. At one point it got to 29. They were able to battle their way back. But basically anything Boston wanted on the offensive side, Boston got on the offensive side. And that became a huge issue. For Dallas, offensively, they were also shut down. And I do think this is where you get a bit more optimism, because I'm fairly confident that was the worst game we've seen from Kyrie, or we will see from Kyrie Irving in these finals. I thought he was pretty bad and just was a non-factor. But credit Boston, they made everyone a non-factor. Luka had 1 assist in 35 minutes. That never happens with Luka. They absolutely took away the passing options that Luka Doncic had, and now he got his in scoring, but they took those passing options away. That was a real good job by Joe Maz and this team defensively, and I just want to say, credit Joe Maz. He coached his ass off in that game. I didn't give him a whole lot of credit going into this series, but I thought they did a great job there. But they just took away every other option Luka had, and so he scored, but he alone isn't going to be able to outscore all of those guys. Kyrie needs to get going. We said in the preview, if Kyrie's the second best player in this series, then the Mavericks win the championship. If Kyrie is the fifth best player in this series, Celtics might sweep. Like that's how it is. On the Boston side, there isn't a whole lot to analyze. Jaylen Brown was awesome. KP was awesome. Tatum was good enough. Everyone else was great, and they kicked the shit out of them. Offensively, they got anything they wanted, and it really started, and I know they brought this up on the broadcast, but it really did start when they started attacking the paint, and it opened up passing lanes off of that. It got them opportunities at the rim. Once they started really attacking, Dallas just had no answer. Their perimeter defense is sketchy at best, we'll say. And Boston exploited that, and I would imagine they're going to continue to exploit that. And so I do think we had a bit of a romanticized version of Dallas in our heads, me included. Like, I am not, I have no hill to die on this one. I 100% was like, yeah, I go Mavs, go. But you saw what worst case scenario was last night, where this Boston offense got anything they wanted. And then defensively, the help defense was tremendous. Porzingis was a shot blocking machine. Jaylen Brown was everywhere defensively. Like this was a complete team performance from the Boston Celtics in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Let's shift now to Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, shall we? All right, it is preview time in the Stanley Cup playoff as we get ready for the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Florida Panthers coming up. It starts tomorrow. The biggest story of this is obviously the best player on the biggest stage. Connor McDavid finally gets his opportunity to play for the Stanley Cup. He has been incredible his entire career, and then specifically in these playoffs. And it would be fitting that he would win the Stanley Cup this year, because this has been, and it is tough to pinpoint when it hasn't been at a high level, but this has been the best hockey of Connor McDavid's career, in my opinion. He has been so good this season. And now he gets his first moment in the Stanley Cup. But really, it's been that whole line. And make no mistake about it, a lot of that is because of how good McDavid is. But Zach Hyman has played the role of Zach Hyman really, really well in these playoffs. He has been unstoppable in front of the net in the postseason. He is a real weapon in front of the net there. And I know that there is a lot of, McDavid just whatever. But the way he is able to win battles in tight, the way he's able to elevate the puck in close has really done wonders for this team. And I think he is, when they got him, that was one of the real missing pieces. They still needed some on the back end. We'll talk about them in a second. But he has been so great. And he makes this line unstoppable and almost impossible to defend when he is out there and he is doing his thing. The one part of this where you are looking at, okay, what needs to happen now for Edmonton? Draisaitl needs to step up. Possession-wise, the group was fine in the series against Dallas, but he needs to be producing, and I think he needs to be a little bit more noticeable. I didn't love his game in the West Final, and I think having this layoff is going to help. I think having a couple of extra days between some games when they travel is going to help him specifically, I think, the most in this series, and maybe even give Edmonton an edge. I have no idea where I'm going prediction-wise in this series, by the way. But I do think that Florida is too deep for Draisaitl to not be a factor. And I just said that against Dallas, but I do think that this is a Florida Panthers team that has so many options that Draisaitl can't just be a passenger. He needs to be one of the 2, 3, 4, 5 best players in the world that he can be, and continue to step it up that way. They need him. We talked about it in the NBA Finals with Kyrie. I think Edmonton needs Draisaitl to be the second best player in this series. If they get that, they're probably winning the Stanley Cup. If they don't, they still might, because McDavid's that good and the rest of the team is actually pretty good too. But they need Draisaitl. I think he can be a real X factor in this series. And then I'm interested to see what role the depth guys play. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I kind of called him out for being a little bit quiet in the Edmonton-Dallas series. And then he goes out and scores 2 of the biggest goals of the series, helping this team get to the Stanley Cup. Perry and Fogle helped Draisaitl get going. What do they do? And who are the other players that step up in this series? We talk about Florida's depth. Edmonton has had it at times. We will see if they have it again. On the back end, never, ever, 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 ever put Nurse and Cece back together. That should not be a thing. Florida has way too much offensive talent to throw that old reliable out there and have it be a problem again. So we will see what they do. but it should not be that. And the big one, though, is Bouchard and Ekholm. They have been unstoppable in the playoffs. In back-to-back series, Bouchard has outplayed Hughes, and I think he outplayed Heiskanen in the Western Conference Final. If that is the best defensive pair in this series, that is a massive boost for the Edmonton Oilers. And it's so interesting to look at how you can kind of counterpoint these two teams with the high-end talent that they have, some of the great players they have on the blue lines, some of the unpredictable players they have between the pipes, and the depth pieces. It really is going to be such a fun battle to watch. And then lastly, Skinner has to stay hot. He has been incredible since he got yanked during the Vancouver series. He cannot let in one bad one. He can't give this Panthers team extra goals and allow them to get that momentum going or to take any momentum away from the Edmonton Oilers. Both these teams have to be looking at this, and this is the way it should be. It's the Stanley Cup, but they have to play perfect for 4 to 7 games if they are going to reach the ultimate destination and be able to hoist up this trophy here at the end. I know it looks a whole lot smaller in person, but they need to play almost perfect hockey if they're going to get to that level. And then the last one for me for Edmonton is they cannot fall into the Tkachuk-Bennett trap that some teams have fallen into in the past. They have to just kind of let that shit slide. And for Tkachuk and Bennett, and they have been better about this, to be fair, but they cannot be the only ones heading to the box on anything. Because this Edmonton power play is too ridiculously good to be giving these guys extra things for extra shots after the whistle. So that's it from the Edmonton side. What about the Florida side? On the Panthers, a key here. If two of Tkachuk, Barkov, Reinhart, or Bennett are better in this series than Leon Draisaitl, I think they win the Stanley Cup. These guys can mix styles so well. They can play heavy. They can also really go high-end skill. I don't know if you can out high-end skill Edmonton if Draisaitl is going, but if you have Tkachuk, Barkov, Reinhart, or Bennett playing better than him, and you get into those foot races, I do think that they could have the edge. And then they have other players who can step up too. Rodriguez has been really, really good. Verhaeghe is a beast and probably should be included in that top 4 anyway. Both these guys, I think, give that extra level of depth that I don't know if Edmonton can match. Like, I don't mind Edmonton's depth, but they're now going to need Henrique to step up. If Kane's healthy, he's going to need to step up because Rodriguez and Verhaeghe are going to be there. So now they need those guys to be factors as well. Florida also needs the blue line to stay strong. Forsling and Ekblad really found their stride after a shaky start against Boston, and Montour is so strong as well. Those two are probably going to get all of the McDavid and Draisaitl minutes, and then the third pair, you go. You figure yourself out there. But we saw in the Dallas series, Draisaitl and his groups were able to win, or when they were able to win the expected goals battle against Heiskanen, that put Dallas so far behind because Dallas just doesn't lose the Heiskanen minutes. If Montour or Ekblad and Forsling or whoever can win the Draisaitl minutes in that same type of dominant fashion, kind of offset whatever McDavid is going to do, I think that makes it really interesting. You'll notice I'm saying really interesting a lot. This is such a fun series to look at and try to break down, and I just can't wait till they drop the puck coming up on Saturday and we can finally get this thing going. Between the pipes, Bobrovsky, they need him to win the goalie matchup. That one is so plain and obvious. If they want to win the Stanley Cup, Bobrovsky has to be the best goalie in this series. He cannot play second fiddle to Stuart Skinner. I am interested to see if there is a coaching edge in this series. Paul Maurice has been there before. Knobloch barely has. So I'm so fascinated to see this coaching battle. I have been flip-flopping on this. Even up to this exact moment, I have Panthers in 7 written in my notes. I'm going to change it after going over this again. I think it's Edmonton in 7. But basically, I'm just predicting one game, right? Like, the rest of it playing out the way it is. But this is going to be such a fantastic series. All right, it is now the return of Football Friday. We don't have enough to make it a full thing, but we're going to put it on this episode here as we look at the Calgary Stampeders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the rest of the week in the CFL. Week 1 in the CFL got going last night. How about the Owls? Look, we told you. Watch out for the Alouettes as they come up with a win. Hopefully you guys were able to get a bit of a sprinkle on the money line like your boy did and come away with some nice coin off of that one. Let's go to the games tonight. I will be there at McMahon Stadium as I won't be wearing this, I promise. As the Stampeders take on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I don't think very highly of either of these teams. The Stamps receiving core has been beaten up, but I do think they have enough to get going in this game. We've talked before about how huge of a series this is for Mayer. They need him to just be good enough. This team defensively is so good, and I think they're going to absolutely shut down Hamilton tonight. So just do enough to get the defense across the finish line. The key in this game is going to be Calgary's defense. They have so many difference makers on their team, as noted by our difference makers segment that we did. I do think that they are going to be able to shut down Bo Levi Mitchell in his return to Calgary. It's just a matter of can the offense do enough, like I said. And for Hamilton, to give the keys to Bo again for another season is insane. I understand the financial commitment that they have made, but I don't think they have a whole lot behind them. I think that this could be a really, really long season out in Hamilton. I think Stamps win this one tonight. I am going with the Stampeders to win this game outright. Saskatchewan taking on the Edmonton Elks. I did a more in-depth preview of this game over on the new podcast, the Rider Happy Hour. Check that one out wherever you get this. You can check that. With Trevor Harris healthy, I think that Saskatchewan is just a better football team. I think they would have been a playoff team last year if Harris would have stayed healthy. I worry about the defense a little bit. I think this defense is a player away, but I don't think McLeod Bethel Thompson is the guy, to be able to get that, or to be able to take advantage of that here in week one with Eugene Lewis, who is very good, and the rest of the receiving core, that's... So I think Saskatchewan comes up big, but I do worry about the defense. So that's going to be... I think both sides are kind of the weakness of both teams. So which one is able to win that one, we will see. I'm also curious to see what Edmonton's defense looks like. But again, more in-depth breakdown, definitely more from the Saskatchewan side on the Rider Happy Hour, available now. And then the main event of the weekend, it is the BC Lions taking on the Toronto Argonauts. I have BC winning this one. This is a huge year for the Lions. They're hosting the Grey Cup. Expectations are high, and I think they come out with a really good start. Vernon Adams is a lot of people's pick to win MLP. He has lost quite a few weapons this year. So this will be interesting because this is a really good Toronto defense. How does Vernon Adams elevate those weapons around him and come up with some big plays? We'll see. Both these teams took quite a bit of hits in this offseason. And look, I picked BC as my Grey Cup pick, but then you go over it a little bit. It's like, man, they lost a lot this offseason, and I don't know if they've replaced it all sufficiently. So you're hoping that Vernon Adams has another gear in him and some other players can step up. For Toronto, so much controversy around everything with Chad Kelly. I think the offense is going to struggle, but this defense is going to be really good. So that's going to be a fun challenge to see what they do coming up this week in the CFL. And just quickly, I had a big whole thing set up about what I'd like to see the CFL do, and then they did it, going on to CTV starting after Labor Day. This is huge. This is amazing news and something the CFL has needed for a really, really long time. I will say, in just my one pessimistic thing, you can't just say, oh, we're on CTV. Fixed. You need to now, A, have your best product on there on a week in, week out basis. B, build up stories leading into that. Get people invested in these games so that people on Saturday afternoon are going to get super hyped about tuning in to CTV. And you need to be able to market what happens after that on those games also. So I think that there are some big things that could happen here with the CFL. They just need to take advantage of this big opportunity. That's going to do it for Football Friday and today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Reminder, if you want more football content, Rider Happy Hour, it is available now wherever you get your podcasts and just in the Couch Potato Diary feed and here on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Follow me on social media. Talk to y'all next week, or I'll see you at the football game. I'm out.